today's Customer Data Platform Summit India, brought to you by Lemnisk. I am Subra Krishnan, CEO of Lemnisk, and I will be your host today. A very quick word on Lemnisk before kicking off. Lemnisk's customer data platform-led personalization and marketing automation delivers superior customer experiences that result in increased conversions, retention, and growth for enterprises. The key capabilities include the ability to uniquely resolve a user in real time across different data sources and channels, creating one-to-one hyper-personalized experiences for each user across multiple marketing channels, orchestrating individual customer journeys on the right channels at the right time using a proprietary inbuilt AI engine called Ramanujan. Lemnisk has offices in Dubai, Singapore, Bangalore, and Boston. Lemnisk is ISO 27001 and ISO 27018 certified. For more information, please visit www.lemnisk.co. That's lemnisk.co. You can also email us at marketing@lemnisk.co if you're looking for CDP-driven marketing automation or personalization this year. So that's the quick introduction out of our way. So let's dive right in. So today's Customer Data Platform Summit is actually the third and final of 3 summits that we planned across Southeast Asia, Middle East, and India regions. We had our Singapore and Dubai events earlier this month, which was very, very well received. And so today is actually the India session, the rise of the super intelligent marketer, right? Now, the idea, the first session really talked about some of the modern marketing principles and ideas in terms of how can you think about marketing, how can you think about data-driven marketing, and then also talked a little bit about how you can think about organizing your tools, organizing your MarTech ecosystem, right? And how can you really do all of this effectively, right? In this session, the rise of the super intelligent marketer, we will talk to a few exceptional MarTech leaders who have converted these principles and ideas we spoke about in the last session into hugely successful data-driven marketing strategies. So let me introduce them without further ado. Sapna Desai is our first speaker. Sapna is Head Marketing and Online Sales at Manipal Cigna Health Insurance. Sapna is responsible for developing and implementing the overall marketing and brand strategy to drive the growth agenda for the organization. She leads the consumer insights, brand strategy, and media, corporate communication, channel, and digital marketing functions. Before joining Manipal Cigna, she was responsible for providing strategic direction and leadership for financial brands at Ogilvy Advertising, Mumbai. She has also worked across service industries, including ING Life Insurance, Indian School of Business, and BPL Mobile in various marketing roles. Sapna has rich experience in all aspects of direct, mass, and digital marketing, besides having managed some of the largest and respected brands. She has also has experience in business development and product management in the services sector. Sapna is a commerce graduate with an MBA from NMIMS Mumbai and has been a jury member at various ad clubs, MVs, FEs, ABBYs, IAMAI, and DMAI awards. So Sapna, warm welcome to the panel session to you.
Thanks, Subra. That was a long introduction, and this whole summit, I didn't know that I was part of it, marketing, technology expert and stuff like that. But we have a lot of learnings, so thanks for that, and look forward to this conversation.
Wonderful. Our next speaker is S. Swaminathan, Executive Director, Group Strategy, RK Swamy Hansa Group. Swamy is an Executive Director at RK Swamy Hansa Group. At RKS Hansa, Swamy is looking at the integration of marketing communications, marketing research, technology, digital and analytics for the RKS Hansa Group, which is one of India's leading marketing services firms. Swamy was previously the co-founder and chief executive officer of Hansa Customers Equity, a data analytics and MarTech firm based out of India. He has over 30 years of experience having a rare blend and balance of both data-driven skills, design thinking, and marketing experience. Swamy has successfully worked with leading blue-chip clients by using the power of data, analytics, customer interaction and technology platforms, and agency thinking, program management, and consulting capabilities to deliver exceptional value and results for his clients. He has managed several successful analytics-driven marketing programs for different industry verticals like automotive, retail, financial services, media and entertainment, travel, and hospitality, to name a few. Before setting up Hansa Equity, he was working with one of the world's top marketing services companies, the WPP Group in India. He was the national head and executive vice president of iContract, one-to-one agency of contract advertising, India, and a subsidiary of JWT India. He's among the early evangelists to lead the data-led marketing and analytics thinking in the APAC region. Under his stewardship, iContract became a top-ranking one-to-one marketing agency, both in terms of revenue growth, new business wins, and awards. Under his leadership, the agency won the prestigious Cannes Lions Direct Gold Award. It was the first time that India won a direct line in this category. Over the last 3 decades, he's had a rich experience of handling Indian and international client relationships. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering and a postgraduate degree in management. He's an avid blogger, podcaster, and runs his own blog and podcast. He also teaches at leading management institutes and regularly writes in leading management dailies and magazines. He's also a fellow of the Institute of Direct Marketing, London. His other interests include Indian classical music. He's an accomplished percussionist himself. Swami, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Subra. That was too long an introduction. So, I think people will get bored. So let's kind of get started with the discussion. I presume they want to learn a lot more rather than learning about ourselves. Sure. Thanks. I agree with Sapna on the introduction.
Yeah. Our final guest is Vaidyanathan Ramani. Vaidya is currently the head of products and innovation center of PolicyBazaar.com, the largest online aggregator in the country, and has led multiple roles in businesses throughout his career. Prior to his role, he was the joint business head and product head for the health insurance business at Policy Bazaar, where he successfully established market-leading segmentation strategies to drive online adoption in health insurance across the country. He also helped establish innovative marketing platforms and a long-term renewal strategy for the business that has helped anchor the unit as a key pillar for Policy Bazaar. Now, in his current role, Vaidya is working with all major insurance partners for building up new products that help leverage the digital channels for handling the unmet needs and derive value from insurance products for a vast majority of customers. Prior to this, he was with Royal Sundaram, India's oldest private insurance company, where he led the company's strategy on M&A, growth, and profitability. He was also recognized for his efforts as a global leader for Royal and Sun Alliance, a $9 billion insurance conglomerate and member of the FTSE 100 London. And he's also postgraduate in business administration from IIM Bangalore and an engineer from the College of Engineering, Guindy. Vaidya, warm welcome to you as well. Thank you so much for taking your time out.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So without further ado, let's kickstart this session. So let me start by asking you, and maybe Sapna, you could go first, Swami next, and Vaidya third. I think from a digital marketing perspective, COVID probably happened at the intersection of 2 decades. As we look at the last decade from a digital marketing perspective and the next one, what are some big shifts and trends you're seeing in how marketing and customer experience is evolving? Sapna, if you could just start there.
That was like the first thing, if I had to. It's a very broad question, so I guess we'll take it in bits. And I think the second thing that I would like to kind of really stress upon is that, the key thing that COVID has, this whole situation of pandemic, from our perspective, has been the care that we kind of give and, what you say and what you do. The reality between, the promise and the moment of truth is extremely important. So, if you looked at marketing, you talked about a decade back, in the last 2 years. So the consumers want to, really, they're with you, they're at you, the rise of the social, the ORM, co-creation. Those were not things that we kind of did, when you started looking at, and I come from a traditional, so Gilvey, marketing being an art, it's become more of science. It's really, it's shaken quite a few people up. And I think it's really about adapting to that learning, because consumers have moved. So your marketing and business models need to move. So I'll leave it at that right now.
Wonderful. Swami, I know you've really seen a spectrum of customers during COVID as well. And I think obviously, you've sort of seen the shift happen. Maybe it accelerated. But what are those shifts, big shifts that happened? And what's your take on sort of how things are going to evolve over the next decade or so?
So, Subra, I think literally, if you ask me, organizations take these disruptive transformation only when things like COVID happened, because everybody always knew that this was happening. You already had digital spends growing at 30%, and you had all of that going. I think customer data was there, but clearly I think if you really look at the term marketing, the way marketing was defined literally was about saying, hey, I run a marketing department, I run some communication, I do some digital advertising, and marketing is done. Okay. But the definition of marketing has changed due to the COVID pandemic, because marketing is really about the experience, right? So I call the call center, nobody picks up because obviously, the call center is not working. I go to the website, I put in a ticket that my claims is not being processed, or my car is broken down, or I'm ordering online. Suddenly marketing is about the experience. Okay. So therefore I think the biggest disruption that I would say, which in my opinion is a very, very big shift, and I think it's still happening, I would call it at an algorithmic pace, not at a exponential pace, is marketing is experience. So I keep calling it MX. So marketing experience is actually the holistic approach to you feeling about the brand. So it's no more like what Sapna said. We always know it's an art, but you actually look at the brand and then say, what, is my experience good? And the experience is not just about what I feel about the brand, but what the brand does to me when actually things are not happening the way I think. That's really where I think marketers need to change their mindset, and I think that acceleration, I believe, will happen, and that's the big change that I'm seeing. So I'm seeing, like BCAD, I'm saying pre-COVID, post-COVID, I think marketing has to change that way if at all brands have to make an impact in consumers' lives.
Wonderful. No, that's a very interesting perspective there, MX. Vaidya, over to you. What are your thoughts on this?
So, I mean, we are a digital entity, per se, right? So for us, digital marketing was what was bread and butter and continues to be. So probably a little unlike other entities who had a mixture of marketing mix at their front. I think we were fairly heavily digital oriented. But having said that, I would say if the question was, did COVID transform something, and does it say something about the full transformation from this decade to next decade, then I'll pick it up this way from a digital marketing perspective. I'm going to use COVID as an example of what happened in the last 12 months. And I think if you just take that backward a little bit of what gradually happened over the decade and what we expect for the next decade, it may be a good example to look at. So let me put it this way. Whenever we are looking at any kind of new mode, marketing mode, new methodology, let's say digital marketing, right? At any point in time, if I just visualize the entire set of people in the market as a set of 100 people, at any point in time, you are building something like a digital marketing that's slowly expanding its window from the earliest adopters, the first 2-3 people, towards potentially what could one day you're hoping would cover the entire set of 100, the gamut of 100. And it's a gradual process. Year on year, you're expanding the scope of people who come into it. Now, what you will always understand is what works for the first 3 people. The friction for the first 3 people is very low because they themselves are early adopters. They're willing to work with you in the mode. They're somewhere tuned to that mode because that's how the early mediums get made up, right? If you look at the first 20 people, they are very different from the remaining 80. They are far more oriented towards it, which is why there was a natural selection for them to come. If you start looking at the first 50 people, they're again different from the rest 50.
Yeah.
Now, as this whole window expands, one has to rethink of the strategies that were working for you in the past. You could have probably been extremely good for the first 3 people, the first 3 percentile, because they are naturally adopting what you give. But the minute you expand, leverage the digital marketing from the 3 to the 10, the same techniques won't work. You probably have to work around how to implicitly understand what the customer wants, how to implicitly use a lot of intelligence to filter them out, use a lot of intelligence to present what they will require, or figure out all augmentative capabilities, telecalling centers, chatbots, by which you can try and enable them. Now, the reason I brought this up is to say what would have normally happened in 5 years or maybe 3 years, COVID made sure it happened in 3 months. We suddenly went from, let's say, 15 So suddenly people having no other mode to go for, and we are in the business of insurance, we are in the middle of pandemic. What do you need more? People suddenly wanted insurance, more and more of it. Suddenly the 15 became 45. People were 45 or 50 because people were desperate to get something. They were willing to come online to just get that kind of solution. Now, what works for 15 does not work for 45. So, over a short period of time, entities like us managed to, and we are continuing to, evolve ourselves from what was working before to bringing a lot more intelligence to handle this flow of volume. Now, one may say, one could expect to say this was a temporary blip, things have kind of settled down. All of us can see that things have settled down a bit now. But I think what it showed is the minute that you brought people up, what if you expected 15 to become 45 in 4 years, it's probably going to happen now in 2 years because the people have been given a sense of what can happen. So it makes sense that we continue to evolve what would work for the 45 pretty fast. And I think and we can go about debating whether it is intelligence, whether it is augmentative technologies, whether it is even looking at offline, something that we probably started seeing. But I think what COVID has done is just made sure it is a bridge, as you rightly said, is because what it has done is it's shown this is where we leave the past decade pre-COVID. This is where potentially we would exceed by the time the next decade ends. And that's just a blip, and we've slightly gone back to being business as usual.
Wonderful. Swami, I know you were obviously, what were you seeing? Because you're obviously sort of maybe you have the vantage position of sort of being seated across different industries, right? So what were you seeing across the board, and what were you really telling customers during this time in terms of how they should adopt or what they should or should not do?
So I think, Subra, the key point was just imagine, a zero demand situation, right? I'm a retailer, and I just, I really don't have anything that I could kind of, footfalls are not in my, control, and suddenly, every Friday evening, retailers are used to sending you messages saying, hey, here is an offer, please walk into the mall.
Yeah.
Suddenly they just don't have anything to kind of communicate, which is if you are an offline retailer, and suddenly you have the Amazons of the world, actually the business is booming. So which means that how do you really transform this offline customer to their digital channels? I think there was a big change that they had to kind of make. While these organizations, what I saw in a typical retail was the e-commerce team, of a typical offline retailer would do initiatives independently vis-a-vis an offline retail team. So they had to kind of quickly come together, and that's a big change that one saw. So that was one thing. And number two is, what would you communicate? I don't have anything. Marketing typically is used to communicating, about a brand, about offers and things like that. Suddenly I don't have anything to communicate. So you have to use data intelligently. So imagine if I bought a running shoes 6 months back, if I was a retailer, would you communicate to me and say, what, hey, are you kind of still, doing your fitness regime? So everything need not be a transactional message. You need to do a lot of relationship messages. Okay. I think that's the biggest sense, whether you are in automotive, whether you are in financial services. I heard Deepak also talk about, demand for a bank, dropping, hugely. But the fact is that the bank has to build a relationship with me, because when times are good, then I need to be with the bank. So I think marketing moved from transactional to actually being relationship driven. And every time you don't even have to buy. Okay. I think that's the big shift that, we were talking.
Very valuable input there. Yeah. So I think just the other big trend, of course, that gets talked about every time we look at the next decade and sort of the early trends that we saw, in the last decade. And I think maybe one could go as far as saying that no discussion on maybe intelligent marketing is really complete without a reference to, let's say, ML/AI, machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I think just shifting gears here, there is a lot of mischaracterization of terms like machine learning and artificial intelligence. So I do want to start by asking each one of you, maybe Sapna, you could go first again. What does machine learning, artificial intelligence really mean to you? Like, how would you sort of define it, right? And have you, or how do you plan to sort of leverage ML/AI?
I'm getting all the hard questions first. That seems to be the plot. Okay, fine. Anyway, so Shubhra, see, I think if I had to think of this, I'll answer it from a marketing KPI kind of review. Okay, now what is my first KPI now in 2021? Right, it's customer acquisition. Okay, now that's a KPI. It's a growth. So the growth of the organization, growth of business. And what is also happening is that the cost of acquisition, and I think, Vaidyanath and teams have been, leading it for us, is something that's becoming, pretty expensive, as we scale, as we say, the organic or the intent customers are fine, but as we grow this channel and, expand it, and, a lot of learnings on the other side of the table. But from my perspective, that's a game that we need to understand and play better. So that's where I feel the power of really understanding who are the high intent customers. How can I reduce the cost of acquisition? And that's cohorts. This is the customer set from an X behavior will be an easier and I can balance the whole portfolio. So I think that's a space that we are really keen to kind of develop more insights on from the cost of acquisition and a customer acquisition perspective. Staying on the same thing, the other part of our, like a marketing KPI is the cost of retention. So for me, again, and for many organizations like us, it's like the customers that you already have, to be able to cross-sell and upsell to them is a better bet. And use them as a base, then go and cost of acquiring a new customer. So understanding this profile, trying to upsell to this profile, again in a smarter way, is again trying to kind of build intelligence and continuous learning, around them is another whole area. So under cost of acquisition, new customer, and retention. So that would be, I would just place it on the table as maybe the first kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I think the second and the important thing, for us also is the quality of business, because, at least, for an insurer, it's also the claim ratio and the loss ratios
Absolutely.
that are very important to our P&L. So top line and NBP, and that's of course the top end of the funnel where the whole digital marketing plays. But increasingly, to build a sustainable kind of a model, you need to kind of see that this is the kind of customer I want to go for.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of customer that I need to focus on, and that again enhances. Sometimes the level of information and learning that you need to get. And staying in the same bucket is the whole aspect of underwriting and fraud management on the quality of business.
Yeah.
So because of the way our the whole health insurance ecosystem is structured, controlling that cost and having a sense of here are the fraud pockets, here is an underlining alert. Here is an extra question I should ask.
Yeah.
Here I should simplify.
Yeah.
Here I should simplify. There I should ask. So that intelligence is something that we are looking to further the experience on, so that most of the experience for the customers that you want becomes seamless, and you're able to flag off situations where you want to make a little more friction.
Yeah.
So I think that balance is a great opportunity, for us to kind of for organizations to look at. And if I had to add another third lever is of course the entire the customer servicing aspect. Some of the questions probably don't need as much assistance at a call center, but a lot of automation can really help.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would think about it.
Got it. I have a follow-up question there, but just to summarize, so basically the three broad buckets you called out. One is maybe a little bit more top of the funnel cost of acquisition and thinking in terms of upsells, etc. then the quality of the business itself that you're getting, and how can you improve it, and potentially angles like underwriting and fraud sort of comes there as well, and then the entire servicing aspect, right? So
Yes.
so now, so have you, and again, you might not have, which is perfectly fine, but have you explored or sort of tried to use scaled machine learning in any of these areas, or have you considered it, and what were some of the sort of maybe walk us through the decision frameworks or thought process that you had there?
So I would again say definitely considering it. No, at this place we haven't. I mean, at my current role, I haven't
Sure.
executed it. But for fraud, for fraud management, we built an in-house kind of a system. So that's something that we have maybe moved a little bit, the needle on. Also, I would say from an acquisition point of view, we've kind of been able to now identify the kind of customers. But again, more or less of an in-house learning kind of a system. And I think the second question that you said are the challenges.
Yeah.
So I think it's to do a lot with the on overall realization and the influence and the culture of getting this to be your core uh, you know focus.
Yeah.
I think it's really about aligning digital, IT, underwriting. So I think it's a lot to do with the culture. Of an organization for you to be able to influence, more. So, sometimes you end up talking and less on execution, or you might just lose the flow. It gets, you start as project X and it becomes project Y. So I think those are things that, you need to live with, and you need to kind of really keep pushing and, getting that vision shared across the organization. And more or less, I feel that there is a lot more openness, and I think the acceleration will be much faster towards this across organizations.
Okay. So, Vaidya, let me jump on to you there, and then Swami, I would love to sort of gather your thoughts there. So, yeah, I know there's always this new shiny tool to the temptation to always use that, but maybe just define that new shiny tool for everybody the way you see it, and then how you think it could be leveraged or how you are actually using it.
Yeah. So for us, AI ML means it's an assessment methodology for us, where we would want to deploy it when we think it's beyond the normal typical realm of assessment, and it could include anything. We're not restricted by anything. Anytime we are moving beyond what would be a typical assessment, right? Straightforward assessment. Now, and so it may be a little broad criteria that I'm giving, right? So how do I assess, how do I treat what is an AML kind of an output to be able to take it forward as a company? So for us, an AML output has to be respected or considered with two factors in mind.
Yeah.
Because you're applying it in a certain scenario. You have to accept and understand that the outputs that you get out of this methodology will be two-pronged. One, it's going to be probabilistic in nature. It's going to be more or less giving you a sense of what things are. It's not definitive. You have to accept it's going to come with probabilistic output. The second is that this is built for a certain directed, actionable, focused outcome. It's built with something in mind. The whole probabilistic outcome is built towards answering that question, and that's it. The reusability of anything else has to be really thought through. There could be more modules that you can use, but you started with a question, you get a probabilistic outcome, you have to know how to use that probabilistic outcome to move forward, and therefore build your decision making around it, which can result in explicit changes for the customer and so on. So now, having said that's a broad dream of AI/ML that we work with. That anything that's, I mean, you can realize that therefore, if it's beyond the typical assessment realm, I'm talking about multiple parameters, a lot of interlinkage between them, kind of looking at multi-dimensional view of customers, a single view source of customer, and all everything. But having said that, where do we deploy it? How deeply do we deploy AML in our system today? Right? For us, for the business that we are in, we are a digital platform. So for us, the usage of AML is going to be much more, I would say, from anybody that we are discussing today with. Having said that, we broadly deploy AML for us in three places. The first is we use this in a big way in our prospecting of processes. When I say prospecting, there is a lot of propensity analysis that goes into it. And I can take a propensity from all the way from, how likely the customer is going to buy, to how likely the customer is going to fraud, to how likely that the customer is going to potentially make a claim, because that's also a part of the risk analysis, to how likely the customer would want something, kind of, preference for certain things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of propensity analysis at the point of sourcing, at the time of prospecting a customer. So there is a lot of, we deploy AML across all these phases in order to provide an answer that's very close to what the customer wants as quickly as we can. The second area where we deploy is what I call personalization. Now that you've sourced the customer, you've determined that the customer is going to be key for you, customer is in a position to buy, you've probably got his broad sense of criteria of what he's looking for. You've got to personalize in a way that's easy for him to adopt.
Yeah.
It kind of answers things what he needs to know. It is broadly what I call implicit choices have to be determined based on whatever you know of the customer seamlessly, so that you start suggesting it to him and make him go through the process faster. So there's a lot of personalization involved the minute the customer lands on the platform itself, till the point he gets a transaction, or even till the point he gets a service. The third area where we do is somewhere feeding into the first two, but it's probably the most important, because while everything I've said is under the hood, the customer may not really see it. I mean, he sees the outcome, but he may not see the wow factor, right? The third aspect where we deploy is on information sourcing, be it information sourcing in terms of getting information from context. Let's say voice analytics, right? The customer is speaking about something. How do you determine what he really wanted? It could be document information sourcing, starting from simple OCR to actually complex determination of outputs. It could be from multiple entities outside the platform, wherever the customer is willingly decided to share the information about. Now, all of this are feeding into my first two processes, but these processes are probably more in the face for the customer. Suppose the customer gives me a medical document that needs to be read, right? And we actually produce the output back to them. That's probably more in the face involved. So the third factor is probably more in that range, that it also can help us influence, convey to the customers the capabilities that we hold today. But it's far more important that all the information that you utilize, the non-traditional sources of information, non-digital input source of information, straightforward digital input source of information, which are very, very essential for you in your prospecting and personalization, come from this one. So today we use AI all across this. And as I said, we are a digital platform. So we got to somewhere lead this. We have the responsibility to lead this forward. So we deploy it all across.
Interesting. So prospecting, personalization, and information sourcing, which in turn feeds the first two. That's what I heard from you. Swami, just jumping over to you, I know, and clearly there is some pattern emerging here with respect to, understanding the context in which AI ML could be used, and then be able to apply that. Again, but then I know that you also come from a school that also tends to take a very rational view of many of these things, and often there could be a lot of hype around this as well. What are your views? Again, how would you define machine learning / AI, and when do you think people should go for it? And what are some trends that you're seeing? Your views here.
So, I tend to agree with both Vaidhi and Sapna that, first is actually having, having a, enterprise-wide strategy.
Sure.
To me, I think the first singular point is, do you have an enterprise-wide strategy on what are your key KPIs? And then start saying, would AI and ML, be deployed for this KPI? I think that's where many times, I do see gaps, because, I think there's somebody who asks a question saying, do you use AI ML? And then quickly the team puts something together and then say, oh, here is a AI ML output. Okay. So what I believe is, if you have an enterprise-wide strategy, then see where AI and ML can get deployed. I'll give you some examples. Say, for example, for a very large retailer, we have three key, KPIs, which is to say, how do I increase my conversion? How do I increase my, card buy rate? How do I actually improve retention? Now, if you have to use all of this, is there an opportunity for AI and ML to be used? I'll take, because I think I've seen, BFSI examples. I'm taking a retail example.
Sure.
And here, what we really did was we actually applied AI ML in understanding, actually applying what kind of color people buy. Okay. Again, an application to say, hey, you seem to be liking blues and you seem to be liking denims. Okay. And you seem to be purchasing from this store often. And therefore, here is a set of recommendations of products and, that you may want to kind of buy. So therefore, here is an application of AI and ML based on my, basket, which I've purchased in the past, because I have three objectives, which is to say, hey, how do I upsell to you? How do I increase engagement with you? And how do I build personalization for you? So literally, we actually did close to about 126 personalization in an email. Okay. So therefore, you just had to say, you went to Phoenix Market City, you actually, bought this blue, shirt. You typically tend to like this perfume. This is really what you're interested in. And suddenly the context of why you kind of communicate to this customer started changing. So therefore, we had to kind of bring in common agreed concepts with the analytics team, with the, with the data team, with the marketing team, with the loyalty team. So many people, we had to bring them together. And therefore, the challenge of having that data culture that Sapna and the, KPI that Vaidhi was talking about was an interesting point. So AI and ML in the context of a strategy is very critical. Or for example, for an automotive, we actually get data, which is like billions of, data points that we get out of the, out of the connected car platform that we have built. Okay. So the idea here is not to just get the data, but to actually say, you know what, typically when you get a call for customers car service today, you just measure it by saying, okay, sir, you've completed 5,000 kilometers. Please, come and service my car. But imagine that you use the data to kind of go and say, hey, looks like you are driving a lot. Okay. And there is actually, oil, filter needs to get changed, because that's what the IoT data is pulling you into the customer service conversation that you could do. So I think the most important thing is the key KPI that they had was they wanted to improve the customer retention revisit rates to the customer service outlet. So therefore, then how do you use AI and ML in that context? Or for a very large media and entertainment brand, TRA just announced saying that you can't just do your own package. Okay. So you had to kind of then go back and analyze billions and millions of, subscriber data. And basically we built a recommendation engine, which is completely AI and ML based, where you basically went and said, you know what, this is the package we recommend for you based on what you have been viewing. Okay. In fact, TRA came and said, this is the best model, because we didn't kind of use it to, upsell to customers, but we started building recommendations, and that is something is an application of AI ML. So I've taken three different industries.
Yes.
You kind of look at how can application of AI and ML work in these contexts.
Oh, fantastic. I think just getting that broad perspective across industries was obviously incredibly valuable. Thanks, Swami. So I think so the emerging sort of 2 or 3 things that if I were to just summarize for everybody listening in, one is, of course, start from the top, have a culture, have this mindset that you really want to experiment with AI. And I think we heard this in the earlier panel as well, where I think Deepak spoke about culture and having that mindset. And I think from there stems a sort of very specific set of outcomes that you want. And I think one striking thing that you could see in all the examples that Sapna, Vaidya and Swami gave was that there were very clear kind of sort of goals or specific outcomes that was being expected. And I think that is really what was driving any sort of adoption of AI and ML. So fantastic perspectives there. Thank you so much. I do want to throw in a fun question here as well. Again, since we spoke about entering a new decade, I'm going to throw it to all of you 3 panelists. One starting with maybe Sapna. This time I won't give you the hard question first. Let me start with Vaidya, and then Swami, and then I'll come to you. Ladies last this time around. Yeah. So what is Vaidya? What's your one big take on what's that one big bold prediction that you have with respect to how you think digital marketing or customer experience is going to evolve in the next decade?
Actually, I think there are two things that I always look at. So I don't know which one will be. So I'll probably share both of them that I see. And this is in the context of we're going to see an information explosion, right? Obviously, everybody's moving digital. There's going to be more interconnected customer, and there are going to be more digital systems. We're moving towards digital India and all that. I think there are two key trends that I see will happen through the decade. Maybe not in the first 3 years, but somewhere as we mature into the decade. The first trend I see is that just like early adopters move the needle in favor of digital marketing, there'll be early adopters who will demand privacy over.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Right. So they'll be the first crusaders who will say that let me be allowed to use the information when I want to. Until that point, I should not be identified. None of this intelligence should work on the reams of information I've left around me.
And you see some of that already happening with things like FLOC, coming up. So yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting because all of us will have to find ways around still dealing with the customer, right? That's one side of the key trend I see, the big thing that we will kind of move into. I think the second key trend I see is we should see a lot more voice and video marketing. Today, it's probably not as big in India. I mean, I think for joyful purposes, maybe it's still being used. TikToks have been big and video channels have been big. But from a transactional point of view, service point of view, we've not seen that big an explosion. I think voice and pretty soon following voice video. I think both of this will also again significantly change the way we see digital marketing and the way companies like us leverage information to service the customers better. So I think two trends, both I see will mature through the decade.
Wonderful. No, I think in fact there are some wonderful startups out there that are working in the voice and the video space as well. I think for folks who are listening in, you should certainly spend some time on both these trends. So privacy is one that you called out, voice and video. In fact, in the context of video, one of sort of the big trends that at least I'm personally tracking is addressable TV. How can you sort of, as more and more TV viewing goes online, right? So obviously the old world TV advertising and the way you did advertising is also going to shift. Maybe in the context of video, you could potentially also bring in addressable TV as well. So yeah, fantastic there. Swami, your views.
So I didn't think it was a fun question here. I think it's a very serious question. So I think
to go wild and sort of make one big sort of bold thing, but yeah, there is a very serious element as well. Yeah.
I think the fun answer for me is next decade we should not meet saying that this is the trend that we are looking at. Maybe we need to see more examples of it getting done. That's the way. That's the way I see it. Having said that, I think the key trend that I'm seeing is I think enterprises need to have a connected customer strategy. Okay, I think which is when I think it's going to work, because you must have a connected marketing strategy, you must have a connected customer service strategy, you must have a connected operation strategy, connected sales strategy, which is really where I think typically a CMO like Sapna or others, I think they just keep jumping around with so many agency providers that the data is actually fragmented. Okay, so I will be talking to a BTL agency, they will be throwing data in an offline mode. Okay, I'll be talking to the digital agency, they will be only talking performance marketing. Okay, I'll be talking to my customer service guy, they'll be talking about cross-sell and upsell. Okay, so I think most of them actually kind of look at it from one tunnel, and I almost think that the CMO's job today has become like an orchestrator like Zubin Mehta, just trying to get every agency to kind of think together. So that's really where I think a CDP kind of a platform is going to help, because don't do BTL the old way. Do BTL the digital way. Look at digital marketing not as just performance and things like that, but look at it from actually how do you extract value from the funnel. Okay, so therefore how are you going to be doing that? So I think there is a need for actually getting this connected thinking in the organization, and I think that's the trend, and for which I personally believe skills are missing in marketing
Yes.
department. So to me, the biggest trend is, how many of us are going to get reskilled to this new, to this new change that's going to happen. That I think is the key, and I see marketing departments working with analysts, creative people, tech people, and your ability to kind of be, not just right-brained or left-brained, but whole-brained is really what I'm thinking is going to be the future.
Wonderful, wonderful, and I think, of course, as Lemnisc, I couldn't be happier that you pointed out CDP as one of the trends that is going to be there for the decade. So thanks for calling that out. Let's go to our Zubin Mehta in the end. Sapna, your views on what the big trends are going to be.
Okay, so thanks for that. And see, I think Shubhra, when I have to look at this, I want to kind of look at this from two points. One, as a consumer, as a consumer taking in, the example Swami talked about, retail, and they know my color, they know what I wear, they know when I come in. I'm unnerved. So I completely resonate with Vaidyanathan's point on privacy. So it scares me as a consumer, and I might be one of those early adopters that might kind of, and I've already, to a large extent, I'm there, I don't want it, because I want to have that choice. So, that choice should be mine if I want to share that, and if you should use that, and I should know you're using that, I don't want you to tell me, it's really that whole thing of what is that fine balance. And do I want it? Does the consumer want it? See, I might want it, but I have to give you a consent for it. So if I consent and then you give me stuff and I find it useful for me, like for example in news, I know the kind of stuff I want to read, they map it and I get it, I am fine with it. But if it goes into an area which I don't want you to know, I am uncomfortable with it. So I think that's something very important for marketing. And I would say marketing as a function should be a ethics flag bearer of the organization.
Yeah.
We shouldn't take it to a level that, that it cracks. So, we should take it to a level where it is ethical, consumer is with you, and they want to share it with you. So I think it's very important, from a marketing perspective to kind of take that role that, look, I am at first a consumer's voice, and, that's the way I would say it at the first level. And I think at the second level, I would say that maybe the marketing CMO won't be required, 10 years down the line. If there is a lot of automation, and I think very true on the upskilling, reskilling. I mean, it's glaring on the changed skills that are required. And it's, for example, we are really talking about, the AI ML only at the level of media to a large extent. But I also think creative and the kind of messaging could also get automated. And there are lots of early shoots there that you might not even need to create an ad, and you have, the right segment, you've got it down, you've got the right message, and it's being personalization at scale. I mean, it is a reality, right? And you might have to really rethink the whole way things are being done, because I'm seeing so much work, not only in terms of, targeting and prospecting, but also messaging and content. You're really able to create content, and it's fascinating. So I think, we really need to think how the marketing function will evolve in the next 10 years. Is it a marketing tech function? Is it, what's the role, of the orchestration? But, so we'll have to see how that moves.
Wonderful. But I'm fairly certain that we will see a CMO a decade down the line. Of that, I'm fairly certain. So yeah, thank you so much, Sapna, Swami, Vaidya. As always, incredible speaking to you. Thanks for generously sort of sharing your knowledge with the audience today. There's a lot of key takeaways there. Thank you very much. Given we are sort of,
Thanks a lot.
So the idea here is to really bring you an exploration of what it takes to implement and execute a successful digital transformation strategy. And in that context, I'm thrilled to introduce Sanjaya for this session. Sanjaya is the Senior Vice President, Personal Banking, Marketing and Customer Experience at National Development Bank, Sri Lanka. So, just to very quickly introduce him, I hope he's in the call. Is he there or has he dropped off? He might have an issue, potentially. He might have dropped off. Great. So I think obviously, given there were 2 or 3 challenges with Sanjay joining, so I think we will therefore, the best thing is to, we will probably organize a separate webinar with Sanjay, because his views on transformational marketing is obviously incredible. He has done that, been there, done that for NDP. So we will record a separate session and share it with the audience. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the event today. I hope you can all carry away nuggets of insights from today's session. Just a quick administrative point before we close. This is obviously the third and final leg of the 3 summits we are holding. We had a stellar set of speakers for the other events as well. And the recording for today's summit, as well as the earlier ones, will be available on demand after the event. So please do watch out on social channels and Lemnisc social channels and website. You should also get an email. If you would like to connect with us and know more about Lemnisc, as I mentioned, you can write to us at marketing@lemnisc.co, or you can also write to me directly at subra.krishnan@lemnisc.co. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. Good evening and stay safe, everyone.